The 5 most haunted houses on Earth. There are places in this world where the walls remember, where tragedy has soaked so deeply into the foundations that the past refuses to stay buried, where families have fled in terror and paranormal investigators have left shaken, unable to explain what they witnessed. What you're about to discover are not Halloween attractions or tourist traps. These are real locations with documented histories of death, suffering, and unexplained phenomena that continue to this day. Homes where people have died under mysterious circumstances, where objects move on their own, where voices echo through empty hallways, where something inhuman watches from the shadows. By the end of this video, you'll understand why some houses are more than just buildings. They're prisons for the dead, and the dead are not at rest. Let's begin with a house so evil, it inspired one of the most terrifying horror films ever made. The Amityville Horror House. 112 Ocean Avenue, Amityville, New York, November 13th, 1974. At 3:15 in the morning, 23-year-old Ronald DeFeo Jr. methodically moved through his family's colonial home with a rifle. One by one, he shot his parents and 4 siblings as they slept. 6 people, execution style, all found face down in their beds. When police arrived, the scene was inexplicable. Despite the deafening sound of gunfire in a quiet neighborhood, no one heard anything. None of the victims appeared to have struggled or even woken up. It was as if they were paralyzed, waiting to die. DeFeo's confession was even more disturbing. He claimed voices in the house commanded him to kill. Dark, inhuman voices that promised him power if he obeyed. 1 year later, the house was sold to George and Kathy Lutz. They moved in with their 3 children on December 18, 1975. They lasted 28 days. What happened during those 28 days has been debated, investigated, and sensationalized for decades, but the core testimony has remained consistent. The Lutz family described a house that was alive with malevolence. It started with the cold. Certain rooms, particularly the bedroom where the DeFeo parents were murdered, remained freezing no matter how high they turned the heat. George Lutz would wake up at exactly 3:15 every morning, the precise time of the murders, gripped by an inexplicable dread. Kathy began having vivid nightmares about the murders, seeing details she couldn't possibly have known. She would wake screaming, describing the execution of the DeFeo family as if she had witnessed it. Their daughter Missy, only 5 years old, began talking to an imaginary friend she called Jody, a pig with glowing red eyes that only she could see. George claimed he saw this entity himself one night, staring at him through the window of Missy's second-floor bedroom. A massive demonic pig standing upright, watching the family with intelligence and hatred. Objects moved on their own. Cabinets would slam open. A crucifix hanging on the wall would invert itself. Green slime oozed from the walls and keyholes. Swarms of flies appeared in the middle of winter, concentrated in specific rooms despite frigid temperatures. The most terrifying location was the basement. George discovered a small hidden room, painted entirely red. It wasn't on any blueprints. The family dog refused to go near it, cowering and whimpering whenever the basement door opened. The temperature inside this red room was always significantly colder than the rest of the house. And George claimed he felt an overwhelming presence of evil emanating from it. Paranormal investigators Ed and Lorraine Warren were called to investigate. The Warrens were famous for their work on supernatural cases, and they later stated that the Amityville house was one of the most oppressive locations they had ever encountered. During their investigation, they claimed to have photographed a young boy with glowing eyes in the stairwell, a figure that wasn't visible during the actual investigation. On January 14, 1976, the Lutz family fled the house, leaving behind all their possessions. They never returned. Now here's where it gets complicated. Skeptics have pointed out inconsistencies in the Lutz family's story. Some details changed over the years. The book and subsequent film dramatized events. DeFeo's lawyer later claimed the haunting was a hoax designed to help his client's insanity defense. But there are facts that can't be easily dismissed. The house has had multiple owners since 1976, and while most have downplayed paranormal experiences likely to preserve property value, several have quietly reported strange occurrences, objects moving, unexplained sounds, the persistent feeling of being watched. The current owners changed the address and added significant renovations to deter curiosity seekers, but the house still stands. And the question remains, was the Lutz family's terror genuine? Was the house truly possessed by something demonic? Or did the psychic trauma of mass murder leave an imprint so powerful that the house itself became a conduit for darkness? Whether you believe in the supernatural or not, 6 people were brutally murdered in that house, and something about that location has never felt right since. Now let's travel across the Atlantic to England, to a house where the paranormal activity was so extreme, it was investigated by the same demonologists who examined Amityville, and what they found was even more disturbing. The Enfield Poltergeist, 284 Green Street, Enfield, London, August 1977. Single mother Peggy Hodgson lived in a modest council house with her 4 children, Margaret, Janet, Johnny, and Billy. It was an ordinary working-class home in every way until the night the knocking started. It began in the girls' bedroom, sharp, loud knocks on the walls and furniture. Margaret and Janet, aged 13 and 11, were terrified. When Peggy investigated, she witnessed something impossible. A heavy chest of drawers was sliding across the floor on its own, moving away from the wall with no one touching it. Peggy called the police. When officers arrived, they too witnessed the furniture moving. One constrained later signed an official statement confirming that she saw a chair slide across the floor, with no natural explanation. This wasn't second-hand testimony. This was law enforcement witnessing a genuine poltergeist manifestation. But that was only the beginning. Over the next 18 months, the activity escalated into one of the most documented and witnessed hauntings in history. The phenomena included hundreds of objects being thrown across rooms. Toys, books, and household items would fly through the air, sometimes with such force they embedded in walls. Marbles would appear out of nowhere and pelt the family. Fires would spontaneously ignite. Water would appear in pools on the floor with no source. The children, particularly Janet, would be physically attacked by the entity. She would be thrown from her bed in the middle of the night, sometimes violently enough to cause bruises. Witnesses reported seeing her levitate, rising vertically into the air while asleep, then dropped back onto the mattress. But the most disturbing aspect was the voice. A deep, gravelly, masculine voice that spoke through 11-year-old Janet. This wasn't a little girl pretending. Dozens of witnesses, including journalists, police officers, and paranormal investigators, heard this voice. It identified itself as Bill Wilkins, a man who had died in the house years earlier. Recordings of this voice still exist today. You can hear it yourself. It's guttural, old, and unmistakably not the voice of a child. The entity spoke for hours, sometimes answering questions, other times making threats. It described details about Bill Wilkins, life that Janet couldn't possibly have known, details that were later verified as accurate. Ed and Lorraine Warren flew to England to investigate. They spent time in the house and concluded that while a legitimate poltergeist was present, there was also something darker. Lorraine Warren believed a demon was manipulating the situation, using the poltergeist activity as a cover for something more sinister. She claimed the entity was attempting to possess Janet. Maurice Gross and Guy Lyon Playfair, 2 members of the Society for Psychical Research, conducted an exhaustive 18-month investigation. They documented over 2,000 incidents of paranormal activity. Playfair later wrote that Janet exhibited signs of trance possession, speaking in voices and languages she couldn't know, displaying knowledge of events she wasn't present for, and demonstrating physical abilities that defied explanation. Skeptics, of course, have argued that the children, particularly Janet, faked the phenomena for attention. And there were moments caught on camera where Janet appeared to be throwing objects herself or bending spoons when she thought no one was watching. But here's what the skeptics can't explain: the voice. The independently witnessed levitations, the police testimony, the fact that over 30 different people, many of them trained investigators, witnessed phenomena they couldn't explain, the sheer volume and consistency of the activity over 18 months. DeFeo himself addressed the accusations of fraud, stating that while some incidents may have been faked by the children out of frustration or a desire to impress investigators, the core phenomena were genuine. He estimated that even if 50% of the incidents were hoaxes, that still left 1,000 unexplained events. The activity finally ceased in 1979. Janet grew up, moved away, and has lived a relatively normal life since. She's given occasional interviews where she maintains that what happened was real, that something genuinely malevolent was in that house. The house still stands today. Multiple families have lived there since, and while no paranormal activity on the scale of the Hodgson haunting has been reported, some residents have mentioned feeling uncomfortable in certain rooms, cold spots, the sensation of being watched, the occasional unexplained sound. So what was in that house? A poltergeist, a demon, the psychological manifestation of a troubled family's trauma, or something else entirely? Now we head to the United States, to a mansion in California where wealth and privilege couldn't protect its owner from a curse that has terrified visitors for over a century: the Winchester Mystery House, San Jose, California. Sarah Winchester was the widow of William Wirt Winchester, heir to the Winchester repeating arms fortune. The Winchester rifle, often called the gun that won the West, made the family unimaginably wealthy. It also, according to Sarah, cursed them. Sarah's life was defined by tragedy. Her infant daughter died in 1866. Her husband died of tuberculosis in 1881, leaving her with a 50% stake in the Winchester Company and an inheritance worth millions. Devastated and desperate, Sarah consulted a medium in Boston. The medium delivered a terrifying message. Sarah was cursed. The spirits of everyone killed by Winchester rifles, thousands of Native Americans, soldiers and civilians, were haunting her family. This curse had killed her daughter and husband, and Sarah would be next unless she appeased the spirits. The medium gave Sarah specific instructions: move west, build a house for the spirits. Never stop building. As long as construction continued, the spirits would be confused, unable to find her, and she would live. But if construction ever stopped, she would die. Sarah took this prophecy seriously. In 1884, she purchased an 8-room farmhouse in San Jose and began construction. She would continue building for the next 38 years without pause, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Construction never stopped. The result is one of the most bizarre structures ever created. The Winchester Mystery House is an architectural nightmare, a maze designed by madness and fear. The mansion contains 160 rooms, 2,000 doors, 10,000 windows, 47 stairways and fireplaces, 13 bathrooms, and 6 kitchens. But the numbers don't capture the strangeness. There are stairways that lead nowhere, terminating at ceilings, doors that open onto blank walls or drop-offs with fatal falls, windows built into floors, chimneys that stop short of the roof, cabinets only inches deep, secret passageways throughout the house, rooms built within rooms, hallways that twist back on themselves. Sarah held seances every night in a specially designed room at the center of the house. She claimed the spirits told her how to build, where to add rooms, how to confuse the evil entities hunting her. Many rooms feature the number 13, 13 windows, 13 panels, 13 steps. Sarah believed this number had protective power. Servants reported strange occurrences throughout the house, footsteps in empty hallways, doors opening and closing on their own, whispers in rooms where no one stood, cold spots that moved through the mansion, the feeling of being watched constantly. Sarah herself claimed to see apparitions regularly. She set a table for 13 every night, feeding the spirits she believed inhabited her home. She wore a veil constantly, possibly to hide from malevolent entities, or perhaps because she believed it offered spiritual protection. When the 1906 San Francisco earthquake struck, Sarah was trapped in a room for hours. She took this as a sign that the spirits were angry. Immediately after being rescued, she ordered the front section of the house that had been damaged to be boarded up and never repaired. It remains sealed to this day. Sarah Winchester died in her sleep on September 5, 1922. Construction stopped immediately. According to the curse, building had to continue for her to live. The moment the hammering ceased, she died. Coincidence or fulfillment of prophecy? The mansion was sold and eventually opened to the public as a tourist attraction. But even today, staff and visitors report unexplained phenomena. Wheelbarrows and tools appear in different locations overnight. Footsteps echo through sealed-off sections. Doors lock and unlock themselves. Tourists frequently report feeling dizzy or nauseous in certain rooms, particularly the seance chamber. Psychics who have visited the house claim it's one of the most spiritually active locations in America. Some say Sarah is still there, still trying to appease the spirits. Others claim the spirits of those killed by Winchester rifles genuinely haunt the location, trapped by Sarah's obsessive construction. The Winchester Mystery House represents something unique in paranormal history. It's a structure literally built because of fear of ghosts. Sarah dedicated her life and fortune to constructing a prison for the dead, and if the reports are true, she succeeded. The question is whether the spirits are trapped there or if they're exactly where they want to be. From California, we travel to one of the most haunted countries on Earth. England has a long history of ghost stories, but one location stands above all others as the most violently haunted house in Britain. The ancient Ram Inn, Watton-under-Edge, Gloucestershire, England. Built in 1145, this is one of the oldest standing structures in England, and it may be one of the most evil. The ancient Ram Inn sits on a site of unimaginable darkness. Archaeological evidence suggests the location was a pagan burial ground dating back 5,000 years. When Christianity spread through England, a church was built directly over these pagan graves, a deliberate act to consecrate evil ground. The Ram Inn was constructed adjacent to this church to house workers building the nearby St. Mary's Church, but the building's purpose quickly changed. Records indicate it became an inn and pub, serving travelers. But darker activities allegedly took place in the shadows. Local legend claims the inn was a site of devil worship, child sacrifice, and ritual murder. Excavations on the property have uncovered the skeletons of children buried beneath the foundations. Some showed signs of trauma consistent with violent death. In the 1960s, John Humphreys purchased the property and lived there for decades, documenting paranormal activity that would drive most people insane. Humphreys claimed to be physically attacked by entities in the house. He was dragged from his bed by invisible hands, scratched and bruised by something he couldn't see. He described waking up to the sensation of being held down, unable to move, while a malevolent presence hovered over him. He photographed orbs, mists, and shadow figures throughout the property. Visitors to the inn reported being pushed downstairs, touched by invisible hands, hearing voices whispering threats. The most haunted room in the inn is the bishop's room. This room has a history so dark that even experienced paranormal investigators refuse to spend the night there. Multiple teams have attempted overnight investigations and fled before dawn. The room contains a massive four-poster bed where, according to legend, a witch was burned alive. Humphreys claimed a succubus, a female demon that sexually attacks men, inhabited this room. He described being assaulted by this entity repeatedly, waking to physical sensations and overwhelming terror. Paranormal investigators have recorded extreme temperature drops in the bishop's room, often plummeting from comfortable temperatures to near freezing in seconds. Electronic equipment malfunctions constantly. Cameras fail. Recording devices shut off unexpectedly. Batteries drain instantly. One investigator reported being violently pushed against a wall by an unseen force. Another described feeling intense rage and aggression take over his mind, causing him to lash out at his team before regaining control. The barn on the property is equally disturbing. Humphreys discovered the remains of a child buried beneath the floor, along with broken daggers, consistent with ritual sacrifice. Visitors to the barn report overwhelming feelings of sadness and fear. Some have seen the apparition of a young girl in old-fashioned clothing standing in the shadows, staring at them before vanishing. A particularly disturbing entity seen throughout the property is a centurion, a Roman soldier. This figure appears in full armor, walking through walls along what researchers believe was an ancient Roman road that once ran through the property. Unlike other ghosts that flee when confronted, this entity acknowledges witnesses, sometimes making eye contact before disappearing. John Humphreys died in 2017, but before his death, he gave countless interviews detailing his experiences. He claimed the house was a portal, a thin place where the barrier between our world and something darker was weak. He believed multiple entities inhabited the inn, some human spirits trapped by tragedy, others inhuman things that were never alive to begin with. The ancient Ram Inn is now managed by new owners who continue to allow paranormal investigations. Teams from around the world visit, and many leave traumatized. People have been physically injured. Others have psychological breakdowns during investigations. One team reported capturing audio of a child's voice begging for help, followed by a deep, inhuman growl. Another recorded footage of a door slamming shut with such force it shattered the frame, despite no wind and no one near the door. Skeptics argue that the inn's reputation creates expectation and mass hysteria, that people see what they want to see. But the pattern is too consistent, too many independent witnesses, too much documentation, too many people who enter as skeptics and leave as believers. The ancient Ram Inn stands as a monument to centuries of human suffering. Whatever evil dwells, there shows no signs of leaving, and those who visit often carry something back with them, nightmares that persist long after they've left that cursed place behind. Finally, we return to the United States, to the Deep South, to a plantation with a history so violent and tragic that some believe it has become the most haunted house in America, the Myrtles Plantation, St. Francisville, Louisiana. Built in 1796 by General David Bradford, the Myrtles Plantation has witnessed over 200 years of death, betrayal, and suffering. At least 12 people have died on the property, possibly more. And according to local legend, 10 of those spirits never left. The most famous ghost is Chloe, a slave owned by Clark and Sarah Woodruff in the early 1800s. According to legend, Chloe was having an affair with Clark. When he lost interest, Chloe began eavesdropping on family conversations, hoping to learn information she could use to win back his attention. Clark caught her listening at a door. As punishment, he had her ear cut off. Chloe wore a green turban from that day forward to hide her disfigurement. Desperate to regain her position in the household, Chloe devised a plan. She would poison the family just enough to make them sick, then nurse them back to health, proving her value. She baked a cake laced with oleander leaves, a deadly poison, and served it at a birthday party. But Chloe miscalculated the dosage. Sarah Woodruff and 2 of her daughters ate the cake and died in agony. Chloe panicked. The other slaves, fearing collective punishment, dragged Chloe from the plantation, hanged her, and threw her body in the river. Since then, Chloe has been seen throughout the plantation. She appears as a woman in a green turban, often standing between buildings or peering through windows. She's been photographed multiple times, appearing in pictures that show no one was present when the photo was taken. Staff members report feeling a presence in rooms where no one else is present. Objects move overnight. Furniture is rearranged. The smell of baking cake sometimes fills the house, despite no one cooking. But Chloe is not alone. The Myrtles is haunted by multiple entities, each tied to a different tragedy. William Winter, an attorney who lived at the Myrtles in the 1870s, was shot on the front porch by a stranger. He staggered into the house and made it to the 17th step of the grand staircase before dying. His ghost is frequently seen on that exact step, and visitors report hearing footsteps climbing the stairs, stopping at the 17th step, then nothing. Children's ghosts have been seen playing on the veranda. These are believed to be Sarah Woodruff's daughters, the children poisoned by Chloe. They appear as shadowy figures, laughing and running, only to vanish when approached. One of the most disturbing phenomena at the Myrtles is the mirror. A large, ornate mirror in the hallway is said to trap spirits. According to legend, mirrors were supposed to be covered when someone died to prevent their soul from being trapped. When Sarah and her children were poisoned, the mirror was not covered. Guests and staff have reported seeing handprints appear on the mirror that cannot be wiped away. Figures move within the reflection that aren't present in the room. Some visitors claim to see the faces of children staring out from the glass. Paranormal investigation teams have recorded overwhelming evidence at the Myrtles. EVP recordings have captured voices saying, "Help us, get out," and names of people who died on the property. Investigators have been touched, pushed, and had objects thrown at them by unseen forces. The plantation operates as a bed and breakfast, and guests frequently report paranormal experiences. Visitors wake to find someone sitting on their bed, only to have the figure vanish. Doors lock and unlock themselves. The sound of a party, music and laughter and conversation echoes through the house late at night, despite the building being empty. One particularly unsettling report involves a rocking chair on the porch that moves on its own. Security cameras have captured footage of this chair rocking for hours, with no wind, no vibration, no explanation. The Myrtles plantation represents the darkness of America's history made manifest, the suffering of slavery, the violence of the Old South, the countless forgotten deaths. All of it seems to have soaked into the walls, the floors, the very earth itself. Whether you believe in ghosts or not, the Myrtles forces you to confront an uncomfortable question. What happens when a place has absorbed too much pain? Can trauma leave an imprint so powerful that it becomes a haunting? And if that's true, what does it say about the countless other sites of horror throughout history? So there you have it, 5 houses scattered across the world, each with documented histories of tragedy and ongoing paranormal phenomena. The Amityville House with its demonic presence, the Enfield Poltergeist with its violent manifestations, the Winchester Mystery House with its maze built to trap spirits, the ancient Ram Inn with its centuries of darkness, the Myrtles Plantation with its echoes of slavery and murder. These aren't just ghost stories. These are real locations that you can visit today. Places where multiple witnesses, skeptics and believers alike, have experienced things they cannot explain. The question isn't whether these places are haunted. The documentation is too extensive, the witnesses too credible, the evidence too consistent. The question is, what haunts them? Are they spirits of the dead, trapped by trauma and unable to move on? Are they demons, inhuman entities that feed on fear and suffering? Are they somehow both? Or is there another explanation? Something we don't yet understand about consciousness, energy, and the nature of reality itself. One thing is certain. These houses prove that some places are more than just physical structures. They're repositories of human experience, both beautiful and horrific. And sometimes, the horrific refuses to be forgotten. If this deep dive into the paranormal fascinated you, hit that like button and subscribe for more investigations into the unexplained. Drop a comment below. Which of these houses disturbs you most? Would you spend a night in any of them, or do you have your own haunted house story to share? And remember, the next time you feel a chill in an empty room, or hear footsteps where no one walks, or see movement in your peripheral vision that vanishes when you turn to look, ask yourself this question. What if the dead aren't really gone? What if they're right there, in the walls, watching, waiting, trying desperately to be seen?